This week on Government Matters.
The Federal Exchange, including the FFM, is not a standard consumer website.
The blame game over healthcare.gov hits Capitol Hill with contractors in the hot seat.
The government has voiced its opinion in legal filings and said that we want to get to work on this, and an injunction would be harmful to national security.
The CIA's $600 million cloud computing contract enters new legal territory.
Called Warriors to Workforce, how this organization is helping members of the military transition into civilian jobs.
From the battlefield to the office, Government Matters starts right now.
From ABC 7 and News Channel 8, this is Government Matters.
Thanks for joining us. Government is the engine that runs this city. That's why Government Matters. Every Sunday, we'll bring you the week's top headlines in tech, security, and management. I'm your host, Morris Jones. Topping headlines this Sunday, healthcare.gov. It's still riddled with glitches. Now President Obama is counting on a career management consultant with a knack for taming bureaucratic backlogs. Jeffrey Zients streamlined the cash for clunkers and GI Bill programs. Meanwhile, contractors who built the healthcare portal testified on Capitol Hill. Karen Travers has more.
Lawmakers from both parties have been chomping at the bit to lay into someone about the problems at healthcare.gov.
Amazon and eBay don't crash the week before Christmas, and Pro Flowers doesn't crash on Valentine's Day.
After footing the bill, the American people deserve something that works or start over.
But their frustrations were directed not at senior administration officials, but the contractors who helped build the website. And they say it's not their fault that there have been so many problems. CGI is the lead contractor, and its senior vice president said the web program passed 8 required technical reviews before going live on October 1st.
From a CGI perspective, our portion of the application worked as designed.
Another contractor said when problems came up before the launch, they were passed along to the administration.
All of the risks that we saw and all of the concerns that we had regarding testing were all shared.
And as for delaying the launch, CGI says it didn't recommend that to the administration.
It was not our position to do so.
After the launch, the administration quickly found out
the problems with the site were greater than we expected and anticipated, significantly.
But there are still no answers on when the problems will be fixed.
There's improvements day over day. I cannot give you an exact date as to when it will be completely to satisfaction.
Karen Travers reporting. Another key government website will get a facelift. FCW reports the General Services Administration will update the web portal that federal IT managers use to order and organize telecom contracts. The new hosting center will provide 24-hour access 7 days a week and have a 99.5% uptime. The federal government dropped 6,000 workers during the month of September. This, according to new numbers from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Government executive reports the Postal Service was the only agency to add a significant number of workers. Overall, the figures illustrate the impact of sequestration and other budget cuts on the federal workforce. The Pentagon will lose one of its top officials next month. Defense One reports George Little, Pentagon press secretary and former CIA spokesman, will step down November 15th. In a statement, Little said he wants to spend more time with his family. The U.S. military is the most trusted institution in America, but veterans can encounter a harsh reality when seeking work in the private sector. Nearly 10% of Iraq and Afghanistan veterans were unemployed last year. That's more than 2% higher than the national average. Career fairs can help, as Hatzovella reports.
Just months away from retiring, Army Major Anthony Lee is looking to relocate out west. Currently, he's an acquisitions officer doing finance and budgeting at the Pentagon. He took advantage of the job fair 3 days in a row.
Definitely some companies out there that are interested, and I've been following up with them and already started email dialogue and got quite a few resumes out there.
The job fair, called Warriors to Workforce, was held at the Association of the U.S. Army Convention. The 3-day event helps veterans and current members of the military strategize ways to get jobs in the private sector.
Allows us to do a bunch of interviews without having to travel, without having to go to hiring conferences that are out of the area. So it's been really great.
Brenda McKinney is a district manager at Kelly Government Solutions, a staffing company out of Silver Spring. They've been in business since the 1940s. Locally, they help staff federal government contracts.
Mostly what we focus on is the veterans and veteran hiring.
She says that's because a lot of their work has to do with security clearances.
A lot of these guys coming out of the military have clearances, and so what better resource than the veterans coming out?
Their training and discipline does not hurt.
You can't hire anybody who's more disciplined or can be counted on to be there. Reliability is always an issue, and they are very reliable.
Her company also helps military spouses find jobs. No matter who it's for, she says the jobs are there.
IT, engineering, finance, just about everything.
Sergeant Martine Parades is almost done with her criminal justice degree and is looking for a job in logistics, hoping the CIA comes calling.
Who knows? If I meet different people, I might get a connection to someone that might work in that field.
Retired Sergeant Major Jack Tilley co-founded American Freedom Foundation, the organization behind the job fair.
The Army alone spends over $500 million on unemployment. So the transition process for putting people out of there or taking people out of the service and going back into the civilian community is a large problem. So for us, it's about family. It's about helping people that I've served with for 36 years, about helping them go back to work and really helping them being a productive citizen in our country.
In Washington, Hatsovella for Government Matters.
President Obama hosted another distinguished group of federal workers at the White House this week. Finalists for the 2013 Service to America medals took this picture in the East Room on Wednesday. It's the first time any president met with the Sammys. The Partnership for Public Service started honoring them in 2002. We'll turn from headlines to tech, straight ahead on Government Matters. The cyber spotlight fell on healthcare.gov this week, but our next story might be even more important to the business of government. A top official at NIST breaks down their cyber framework, coming up. In Tech Matters, NIST releases its highly anticipated cybersecurity framework. This February, President Obama issued an executive order calling for the development of a voluntary set of guidelines for organizations that want to manage cyber risks. NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, completed a preliminary framework this week. Now they want to hear from you. Joining me with more on Government Matters is Adam Sedgwick, Senior Information Technology Policy Advisor at NIST. Adam, this is a significant and complicated document. Before we get into the details, I'd like to frame this discussion. Here's an excerpt. A key objective of the framework is to encourage organizations to consider cybersecurity risk as a priority, similar to financial, safety, and operational risk. I think that passage says a lot. For many organizations, this is an entirely new dimension of risk. Who do you think will use this framework, and then how and why should they?
I think that's right, Morris, with the quote about matching cybersecurity risk and financial risk. And really the goal of the framework is to match all those things together so that cybersecurity is also good business, which we think it is today. So matching up those concepts, how business already do operations, with meeting the needs of better protecting their systems and assets is really a goal of the work. And the hope that the audience is really critical infrastructure itself, the organizations, the systems and networks that the private sector owns and this nation's economic and national security relies upon.
Why is cyber cooperation between the public and private sector so important?
It's important because the private sector are the ones that own this critical infrastructure. So they're the ones that are really going to have to take up and use these things. So the process under the executive order leading up to this document was to work with industry to see the things that they're already doing and build off those practices to really help raise the level of activity out there in the private sector and ensure that we have a better level of protection.
So Adam, in August, you released a draft version of this framework, but it didn't include much of Appendix B, a methodology to protect privacy and civil liberties. Why did you add that in?
So the methodology for privacy and civil liberties was called for specifically in the executive order. And that's an area that NIST has worked on for a long time if you look at our work with federal agencies and how they protect their systems. It's very important that when organizations think about how they manage cybersecurity, that they're also doing everything they can to protect privacy and civil liberties.
All right, NIST will hold a 45-day comment period and then release a finalized framework in February. Even then, these will be voluntary standards, but some argue they constitute a slippery slope. Here's a quote. Critics of voluntary standards contend they become, in effect, government regulations because they create industry standards and courts could find critical infrastructure operators liable should a breach occur. Now, do you think organizations should be concerned about liability, Adam?
So I think organizations are already concerned about liability, and they also already rely on a lot of the standards and practices that we find in the document. Really, when we were developing the framework, a lot of the questions we've had from the beginning is to think about the business environment. While NIST is a technical arm and we really focus on those technical issues, we did want to ensure that this was something that businesses and organizations could take up and actually use and put into practice.
This week you spoke with the Wall Street Journal about another critique, that this framework is light on clarity and heavy on paperwork. You addressed the clarity concerns, saying a list of priorities isn't feasible. But what about the paperwork issue?
So I think it's important for organizations to determine their own priorities. And going through this process, we learned that the companies that make up the critical infrastructure have very different interests. So if you're a small water utility, the way that you think about cybersecurity is going to be very different from a large multinational corporation. On the paperwork side, I think the practices in the framework allow for innovation, allow for people to get to the outcomes in different ways. But at this point, we welcome all criticism. The period that we're about to begin is where we want stakeholders to take a look at the document and work with us as they have throughout this process to improve it. So I hope that people are taking a look and being really thoughtful about how we can improve this document leading up to that February deadline.
All of this is cutting edge, happening now. Adam Sedgwick with NIST, thanks for being with us.
Thanks, Morris.
We'll turn from tech to security, straight ahead on Government Matters. The CIA's cloud contract has been held up in court for months. The agency wants to move fast. Is this a matter of national security? I sit down with FCW's Frank Conkle next. In security matters, the controversial cloud computing contract for the CIA. It ran into opposition from the get-go. Now, two top tech companies are locked in a tug-of-war. Here's a recap. In August of 2012, the CIA pulled the procurement after protests from Microsoft and AT&T. In January of 2013, the CIA awarded the $600 million contract to Amazon Web Services, AWS for short. 1 month later, IBM protested that award. It's been in and out of court ever since. Joining me now with the latest on Government Matters is Frank Conkle, reporter for FCW. Frank, you broke this story 9 months ago. This week, a major development. What's the latest?
Well, after IBM protested the contract, it was upheld by the Government Accountability Office. And then Amazon reacted by taking it to court themselves. So they filed a complaint with the U.S. Court of Federal Claims against the government, suggesting that that the CIA had it right the first time. And so that came to court in early October. Judge Thomas Wheeler ruled in one day that the GAO basically had messed up, so they reversed that decision. And what happened there is IBM has asked for a stay. They filed for an injunction. They would like more time to come up with an appeal, and they have said they plan to appeal. So right now it sits in court. Judge Wheeler had said to go ahead and get started on that deal with the CIA and Amazon, again, to pick up where they left off, giving that original $600 million contract the green light.
Well, it's certainly keeping lawyers employed, isn't it? In the pantheon of government contracts, $600 million is large, but it's not remarkable. Why is the CIA cloud so hotly contested?
Well, I think it's the clout factor more than anything. The dollar value is pretty high, and cloud computing especially. I mean, the federal market, it hasn't picked up as much yet, and there's a lot of business to be had there. And so when you get these big guys like Amazon coming in, IBM trying to build out its cloud computing business as well, saying or being able to say even off the record that you have the CIA as a customer, that's a big deal. And I think that is more important than the dollar value itself here. That's a very good point. It's a big feather in the cap for anybody to brag about. Oh yeah, CIA, I've got them. Yeah. I think it's also important to mention SoftLayer. This spring, IBM spent $2 billion on the cloud computing firm. Why? And was SoftLayer worth the investment? Well, that remains to be seen, but the reason they did it was IBM's been more noted in the private cloud before. They've been in the game for a while, since at least 2007. But this deal gives them more clout in the public cloud computing sector. So they have a lot of their own data centers. They get to take soft layers as well. The combination of those, for soft layer, it's great because they get to have those connections that IBM has built over decades and decades. And for IBM, they get to have soft layers public cloud computing infrastructure, which is fairly sizable.
Now, during this prolonged fight, the intelligence community launched its own cloud based on the NSA model. Tell us about it.
Well, this is on their own volition, and they've been trying to do this for a while, for the last couple of years. So this internal cloud, it hasn't been as well publicized, I guess, lately as the public battle to build it, but it's their own cloud. So it connects all the intelligence community agencies together. And it's a big deal. It's part of their eyesight strategy. It's where they see IT for all the intelligence agencies over the next few years.
Now, Frank, let's go back to the CIA cloud. What happens next?
What happens next is we're going to see what happens at court. Judge Wheeler will make a ruling and decide whether or not to grant the stay, the injunction, which would halt work between the CIA and Amazon. That would delay it further, and recently the government has voiced its opinion in legal filings and said that no, we want to get to work on this, and an injunction would be harmful to national security. So their goal here is to get started as quickly as possible. IBM still wants to fight for that contract. It's a lot of money and a big deal to them, and so court may decide it.
There are new words and new phrases in the lexicon every day, but I think the big words to watch for this next year, besides big data, is cloud and cloud computing. We'll stay on top of this story, as you will too, I know. Frank Cockle, reporter for FCW. Thanks, Frank.
Thanks.
We'll turn from security to management straight ahead on Government Matters. It's no secret that agency budgets are shrinking. Federal staffing levels are too. But financial reporting obligations are on the rise. How can CFOs do more with less? The answer next. In Management Matters, the new CFO management agenda. Chief financial officers for federal agencies find themselves in an unenviable position. The public wants them to do more with less. Is that an impossible task? For answers, we turn to our guest on Government Matters, Denise Liepener, partner at Grant Thornton. She teamed up with the Association of Government Accountants for their 18th annual Federal CFO Survey. Denise, how has the federal fiscal environment changed since 2012, and how do those changes impact CFOs?
Well, Morris, as you can imagine, the situation has become quite bleak. Just look at the events that have happened over the last couple of weeks. For example, you had the partial government shutdown, you had the debt limit crisis, and let's not forget sequestration that's right around the corner. And on top of that, you have the federal pay freeze that has occurred over the last 3 years. Granted, employees are going to be receiving a 1% increase this year. However, that is hardly enough to keep up with the cost of living.
Now, one of the priorities for CFOs is maintaining a clean audit opinion. They take a lot of time to put together, and some officials find them more useful than others. Here's a quote from your report. They do not believe the audit is necessary for program success. They see the audit as a compliance exercise rather than something that actually benefits operations. Now, Denise, has the audit process become too cumbersome?
I think that it's actually becoming a little more streamlined for many agencies. I think that they understand that an audit provides them with fiscal discipline and credibility. And I think given the constraints that people are seeing from a funding and people perspective, audits are being performed in a more efficient and effective manner.
Now, legislation plays a key role here. You highlight the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act, the Government Performance and Results Act, and the pending Data Act. All of them impact financial reporting. Are CFOs frustrated with all of these changes?
Definitely, Morris. These are all requirements that in many cases are unfunded mandates. So they're continually being asked to do more with less.
So we've talked about some of the challenges outlined in your report. How can CFOs navigate their way through this, I guess you'd call it a quagmire?
I think what's important is to develop a framework for a new CFO Act management agenda, where you take elements of what has been identified in the reports as being critical to an agency's mission and performance. For example, you have your internal controls and risk management, you have your workforce issues, you have your cost improvement efforts. However, you need to really prioritize what is most important for sustaining your mission and your ability to serve the people.
Denise Sleepener with Grant Thornton. Good to have you on Government Matters. Thanks, Denise.
Thanks, Morris.
And we'll turn from management to final matters straight ahead. Now commentary. Here's Steve Vito of Sage Communications.
We must harness new ideas and technology to remake our government. So said President Obama during his second inauguration speech last January. Those same words topped the White House webpage for the Presidential Innovation Fellows. Launched in 2012, the program pairs proven innovators from the private sector, including nonprofits and academia, with the proven innovators from government. They collaborate for more than 6 months to develop solutions that will save lives, save money, and fuel job creation. Just this week, a group of fellows joined the SWAT team charged with patching up healthcare.gov. Developing innovative solutions to government problems like these can be difficult. In this era of tight budgets, it can be nearly impossible. Take the procurement process. If contractors want to win, they need to put the lowest possible price on the table, even if the most innovative solution costs a few bucks more. For federal workers, tack on this month's shutdown and a meager 1% pay raise after 3 years of frozen wages. The Presidential Innovation Fellows Program is a step in the right direction, but we need to take more steps to attract the best and brightest to public service. I'm Steve Vito.
And I'm Morris Jones. Thanks for watching. Your week is filled with other matters. Safe Sundays for us.